spring's a time where people can rise and people can fall, but who's the biggest riser on Nebraska's roster? Find out next.
You are Locked On Nebraska, your daily Nebraska Cornhuskers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to the show. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I will admit it, Mitch, I have a bit of a competitive side, as evidenced by my slow pitch softball playing career being extended further and further. And because of that competitive side, I get a little into Monopoly Go, and I would like you to check out Monopoly Go as well, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. Join your friends, download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store or on Google Play. And we appreciate you all joining us today and making Locked On Nebraska your first listen every day, free and available wherever you get your podcasts, and of course on YouTube if you're watching along with us, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, welcome in. It's Friday, almost the weekend. Nebraska's got a big scrimmage coming up. It's last major scrimmage, Connor, before the spring game, a week from Saturday. We are 4/5 of the way through spring practice, so 80% done. And you can start to make some conclusions about the spring once you get to that point. And after listening to Tony White on Thursday, the Nebraska defensive coordinator, who we discussed in the Thursday episode ahead of that practice, we talked about whether Tony ranks among the top defensive coordinators in the Big Ten. And to give you a hint, we said he does, in fact. Mm-hmm. We'll hear from Marcus Satterfield next week, and we'll do this same exercise with the offense. But the spring, as you mentioned in the open, has been a time for players to rise and fall. And we're looking at some of the biggest risers in Nebraska camp on the defensive side, on Tony White's side of the ball today. So I will submit some names and we can kind of react and see what we think about the importance of first Bly Hill. That's a name that came up right off the top with Tony White on Thursday. He is the cornerback, the FCS transfer from St. Francis in Pennsylvania, who is getting closer, it appears, to locking down a spot in the Nebraska secondary opposite Tommy Hill in the as a starting corner here in April.
You know, it's funny. We probably haven't talked about that spot enough. You know, this
big spot.
It's a huge one, and you know, Tommy Hill certainly emerged last year. He's a guy that the coaching staff likes. We are accepting that he is kind of the lockdown, you know, surefire number one guy over there, and then you kind of have to fill a second, and preferably you'd like to have a third and a fourth corner that you feel good about. And so there's a lot of open competition, it feels like, in that room. Bly Hill's popped out like, what, 3 or 4 times now this spring? Is, you said we're, you know, 4/5 of the way done now. He's popped out a few times, including yesterday. He was the first name off of Tony White's, you know, top of the brain there. So that's important. That's a really big development. I wasn't sure what to expect when, you know, you get an FCS transfer. But what we know about him is that he's, you know, long and lanky, and you know, it seems like that has gone well so far, which is a huge development for that corner room.
Clearly they saw something, and Evan Cooper saw something, and Evan Cooper's Nebraska's best talent evaluator, I think undeniably on the staff. So not only did he find a talent that would fit the Huskers, he found a talent on film from the transfer portal last December that would fit his position group at a position where Nebraska lost Quentin Newsome, who's been a starter for the past 4 seasons. Really important spot. And as you said, Bly Hill has the size, he has the length, and apparently he's got the ability to make plays at a Big Ten level, because that's what Tony White believes that he's seen so far in these scrimmages. And he's had a lot of competition. You're talking about going against Malcolm Hartzog, who can play safety if Nebraska has a second cornerback that it feels good about. He's going against Jeremiah Charles, a redshirt freshman with athleticism that is off the charts. Mario Buford is a true freshman, early enrollee in camp, who plays corner. So there are a number of players vying for that spot, and it seems that Bly Hill at this point has stuck out. So a couple of linebackers I want to also put on this list. First, Javen Wright, who I think had a breakthrough season last year, but they believe, Rob Dvoracek believes, and he also talked with the media on Thursday, and Tony White brought up Javen's name. They believe he's ready to take another step to another level, perhaps as a starting linebacker this fall. And then Vincent Shavers, he's kind of the true freshman flavor of the month this spring. It seems that he's the guy on the defensive side of the ball. We're not talking about Dylan Raiola and Danny Kalen here. They've got all the hype on the offensive side, but Shavers is a guy who has stepped right in and played very well in their 11 practices thus far.
Well, you lost, Luke Reimer and Nick Henrich at that spot last year, and that's a lot of production over a lot of time. Guys who have just been there for a long time, and you need dudes to step up. Would you say Javen Wright's year last year was more of, he wasn't able to put it like consistently together, but he flashed really brightly a couple times as well. And usually that develops into, hopefully the theory is that would develop into something more consistent as you continue on in your progression. And then, Shavers, it really even couched his, when he had his whole answer about Shavers and called him V9. He says, we don't give freshmen nicknames very much. And he was like, I don't, really care to talk about freshmen this way, but he's stood out. And I think the bottom line is, and why this comes up is because like corner, they just had some holes there with a couple guys who had been there for a long time and needed to fill them. So it sounds like just overall, they've gotten younger guys or role players who are ready to step up into starting roles to do that this spring, filling in for a few guys that have been around for a long time, like Newsom, Reimer, and Henrich.
Yeah, I expect to see Shavers play him with one of the top two groups in the spring game a week from Saturday. So that's something to really watch. Is okay, what is it with this young freshman? They say he's got a personality that just brings his teammates together. He's kind of the complete package, or at least has been in all 3 months of his time on campus so far. You have to be really wary of this kind of stuff, because a lot of times we'll hear about true freshmen, whether it's in the spring when there are early enrollees, or in August when these players are just getting started in the programs. Like a year ago in August, it was Eric Fields who flashed early in camp, and his name started to come out in interviews, and then it faded, and he ended up leaving the program in November or December, but completely out of it at the end of the semester. So we'll keep our eye on Vincent Shavers for sure, but always some caution there with the freshmen. And then finally, the other two names that are risers this spring, Jamari Butler, who had an outstanding season as a defensive end last year, but they believe he's better now. They continue to talk about Jamari Butler, a leader on this defense. He was one of the first players brought in to speak for the team in front of the media this spring, before the spring. And then Riley Van Poppel, who was a true freshman and played well last year. He's had a ton of opportunity this spring because Nebraska's not going real hard with Nash Hutmaker and Ty Robinson. Those guys are getting held out of scrimmages, held out of some teamwork drills. So Van Poppel is getting reps in their absence.
Normally you wouldn't expect a team leader in sacks from a year ago to pop up on the spring risers list, but that's what Jamari Butler was last year. No, there's good reason for him to show up here. And I want to mention with him, like, I don't really, the previous staff was up and down on a lot of guys, and it was hard to kind of track how they felt about any one particular guy. But I don't know. I kind of felt like when the new staff came in, it was like 50-50 on what would happen with Jamari Butler. Was it? Wait, didn't he actually hop into the portal? Yeah, that's what I thought. And so I think the staff has always thought highly of him, and they had high expectations for him last year. And they talk about him, we're like, okay, we'll see what happens. And he ended up being a pretty consistent defender for him. And then even more so to where he's in a leadership role this year. So like he is a riser where he's gone from role player flash guy to, all right, you're going to have to be back there all the time for them, which is huge. And then Van Poppel popped out of nowhere last year too. I don't think that I expected him to get on the field. And there he was right in the middle of the 4th down stop against Illinois, which he talked about a little bit during his Thursday press conference and just saying, "Hey, look, now I feel like I could be out there." But I think the general picture with that position is it's going to be you're going to see a lot of good defensive linemen come out under in this defense and what they do going forward. That's one of those spots where I just feel like they're going to have it pretty locked down, and Van Poppel slots into some pretty good playing time, but they're gonna churn out a lot of good ones, I think, at that spot.
Yeah, they're deep up front, and I think that Butler's a starter. Clearly, I think the reference to him in this list of risers is because they believe he can go even higher than what he did a year ago in leading the team in sacks. So with Nash and Ty and Jamari Butler, Nebraska's got as strong of a front three as it's had in quite some time. So Van Poppel's a guy who's going to provide depth, and he'll be a starter down the road. So after the break, Connor, you mentioned the transfer portal and Jamari Butler, how he briefly spent some time in the transfer portal a year or so ago. There was some news on Thursday in the state of Nebraska regarding the transfer portal in the sport of basketball that interested a lot of people. So we'll talk about that after the break. But first, please subscribe and follow us on Twitter at LockedOnNEB. Listen to us on all of the podcast platforms. Find us on YouTube. We will be back after the break. All right, we've all been there as a player or a fan. It's halftime and the scoreboard is not looking good. You're feeling low, not sure your team can win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head and say, it's time to get back in the game. Pull off some bank heists and take as much of my friends' money as I can. What am I talking about? That's right. It's the smash hit mobile game Monopoly Go. It lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches in the biggest empire. This is the Monopoly you love, the board game, but on your phone with lots of new twists, including a leaderboard to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much to do. Play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends go bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Sounds violent. And charge others rent for your iconic properties. You can even work with your friends in tournaments and crack to open the community chest to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get out there, put your game face on, download Monopoly Go for free on the App Store and Google Play.
And by the way, brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED lights, plenty more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die. You'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and you're not burning cash. With all the parts you need at all the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, back here on the Locked On Nebraska podcast. Guess who's in the portal? I feel like this has been a topic of conversation for going on a couple of years now. When might
years. I was going to say years.
Yeah. When might Chucky Hepburn enter the portal, and where might he go if he does? Well, he's in now, and he's going to play his final year of eligibility somewhere else that is not Wisconsin. Part of the story, he is also in the portal at the same time of a couple of his high school teammates as well, yes. Frankie Fidler and Will Kyle, who are looking around at the moment. So maybe there's a few or two or one that comes back home toward the state of Nebraska. Maybe not. Mitch, what's your early impression on this one?
Yeah, this was a source of great interest, celebration prematurely, I would say, by some around the state of Nebraska on Thursday when this news broke. You're right. I feel like it's been a conversation topic since after Chucky's freshman year, at Wisconsin. Is he going to go in the portal, and then inevitably, if he does, will he come home? Would he look at Nebraska? He's always had these memorable moments at PBA when Chucky has come back with the Badgers to play in Lincoln. They like to boo him, but I think they would gladly cheer him if he was wearing red. These guys, of course, are Bellevue West grads. Hepburn, Fidler, the Omaha transfer, prospective transfer, not a transfer yet, but he's in the portal. And then Will Kyle from South Dakota State. So you could have a package deal kind of situation where 2 or 3 of these guys team up. I would say, and the information that I've heard at this point is don't celebrate at Nebraska. It's not looking all that likely or really likely at all that you're going to have Chucky, Frankie, and Kyle or multiples among that group at Pinnacle Bank Arena next year as Nebraska continues to try to look to fill spots on its roster for 2024-25.
Yeah, it doesn't. I've heard, I think, similar things to you, Mitch. It doesn't feel like that. I think it's an option for them, or for Chucky in particular, but I don't know how high it is up the board at this point. And remember, Nebraska just went out and made some moves in the portal over the last week or so, as we've talked about on this podcast. They have a distributor point guard. Now, I will say, knowing a little bit about what Creighton's doing, maybe Creighton seems like a more likely option for 1 or 2 of those guys, and Creighton still has a couple decisions looming out there with their big players, including what they would expect to have another year out of their point guard Stephen Ashworth next year. So there's that piece of it too. Frankie made a visit to Michigan State last weekend. I think he liked it. And there might be some more teams that go ahead and jump in and enter the fold now that everything's kind of official and they're all in there. I don't know that they have to be a package deal, but it does seem like it's certainly a good possibility at this point.
It's coincidental, if not a package deal that all of these Bellevue West graduates are in the portal at the same time. I mean, Nebraska, you mentioned, has the point guard transfer Raleigh Wooster from Utah, who's headed into Lincoln, and that's already been signed and sealed. And you can't have a Raleigh and a Chucky on the same roster, right? I mean, maybe you can, but I'm not sure that you can have 3 point guards because Aaron Eulis is still on the Nebraska roster also. And Fred Hoiberg didn't get great point guard play, didn't really get point guard play, period, at times in this NCAA tournament season that his squad had. So maybe they'd be okay with going overboard on that position. But, Chucky's a scorer. Chucky can do different things, but he's a distributor first and a ball handler and an outstanding point guard. Would be a great defender, a great athlete, would be a perfect fit for what Nebraska likes to do, but also a good fit at Creighton. And I think Creighton's a team to watch, and Michigan State, as you mentioned, is also a team to watch. Last thought on Chucky is, look, Wisconsin had a promising start to this season. Looked like a team that was going to go to the Sweet 16, if not farther. As it turns out, they struggled in the middle of the year, started to get things back together toward the end, and then bowed out in the first round of the NCAA tournament. So, like Nebraska, I think that Chucky Hepburn is going to look for a place that gives him the best opportunity to win in March. And what you get at Nebraska is a school that has never won in March. Creighton and Michigan State, completely different story, which playing for Greg McDermott or Tom Izzo. Now, Nebraska will make a pitch, like you said, but I don't have a great feeling about the Huskers' chances.
Yeah, I really don't either at this point. But I don't know. NIL can change things in a hurry, and so you keep your eyes open and you see kind of what happens next. Like, I don't know. Like we can look at all these guys in the basketball transfer portal, and one day I think you have a pretty good idea of what's going to happen, and the next day you're like, oh, this team jumped in because this guy went in the portal. Like, the portal's open both ways right now, and then you also still have. I wonder if there's another move or two in the coaching carousel that could happen still. Then you also have the draft, which, guys, early entrants into the draft can go in for the next 10 days or so. So those are big decisions that are still kind of looming out there. But you're right about Wisconsin. They've had a whole bunch of their guys enter the portal already. I mean, they've kind of, just fizzled out and completely disappeared at the end of the year. So it'll be interesting to see what the priorities are there and where things end up for really all three of those guys. But obviously the keen interest is in Chucky.
Yeah. One thing you have to remember with the basketball transfer portal, as the football portal opens this week and craziness ensued, nothing is as crazy as the basketball transfer portal.
Nope. That's as wild as it gets. All right. So there you go. That's our Chucky Hepburn update. Once again, to recap, don't hold your breath. Locked On NFL Mock Draft. It is available right now. Check out the ultimate 6-episode series to hear who the local Locked On experts are picking for every NFL franchise. It includes live reactions from local college football experts and also the fantasy football angle. Find the Locked On NFL Mock Draft right now on Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll be back after this.
All right, as always, here at the Locked On Nebraska podcast, we're keeping an eye on the Kansas City Royals, who were off on Thursday, but are headed home this weekend, 5 games above 500 for a 7-game stand against Baltimore and Toronto. Connor, I think we've got like a shadow podcast going on the Royals here right now.
Pod. Yeah.
Yeah, right. There's a Locked On Royals podcast that you should check out, or you can just listen to our ad reads. Anyway, I'm excited to get to Kansas City. If not during this homestand, then very soon. And it's going to be a better experience because of Game Time. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. It makes getting tickets easier and faster. Prices on the Game Time app go down the closer it gets to first pitch. All-in pricing, no fees at checkout, deals for specific zones in the stadium, and flexible customer service. It's all there. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with the Game Time app. You can create an account and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Check it out at gametime.co and on the Game Time app today. Lowest prices guaranteed. Okay, last segment of the week here on Locked On Nebraska. Before we get into something I'm really excited about introducing to our audience here, congrats, Connor, on getting your second gas mow of the year. Heard about that during your show on 1620 The Zone on Thursday as I was driving to practice in Lincoln. I sense, I'm not quite sure, tell me if I'm wrong, but I sense like a definite skepticism from you toward mowers that are not gas powered. Can you explain this in any kind of way to me as the owner? So, okay, I do not own a vacuum cleaner to mow my yard with. I do not plug in my mower. I upgraded. I upgraded a year ago and went to the Toro battery powered mower. This thing is like, it kicks the rear end of my Honda that I had for 20 years. And wow. I'm cruising around the yard in this thing and I don't have to go to the gas station to fill up. So what's your problem with this?
So, I guess maybe my parents were out of town for a while and they, had me mow their lawn and my dad has an electric mower. I found it very difficult to operate, and it seemed like probably a cheap one or whatever. I found it very difficult to operate. I found it significantly less powerful, and I do like the like the noise and the it's almost like riding a motor.
Yeah, you're right. I had to get used to that with my Toro. Yeah,
you're kind of walking around. You don't have to blast the music in your ears. Like overall, I'm sure it's pretty good in the long run for like your overall health, and then like noise pollution and stuff, air pollution, stuff like that. But I don't know. I like the tried and true gas mow for sure.
There is something about letting all of your neighbors know that you're mowing when you're mowing, just because you've got the engine going.
I was trying to shame my neighbor into coming outside because his grass is, super long, and he finally did, but he couldn't figure out how to run his electric mower, and so here I am with a great looking lawn, and my neighbor's like, a jungle up there.
He clearly doesn't have the kind of power on his electric mower that I do, but my battery powered mower. All right. I want to introduce everyone to a randomly recurring feature that will integrate into the show. It's called, and this could be from me or from you. It's called Things That I Don't Care About.
Love this.
On Friday today, as this episode is released, the University of Nebraska Board of Regents is set to rubber stamp the approval of alcohol sales at Haymarket Park. This has been a contested topic as the university and the other tenant of that downtown Lincoln Stadium, the Lincoln Salt Dogs, have struggled to negotiate a deal to divide revenue produced by alcohol sales. But now they've figured it out. Troy Dannon came in and he got this thing. He got them to the negotiating table, the new Nebraska athletic director, and they're good to go. Tonight, Friday night, as Nebraska hosts Maryland, you're going to be able to go to Haymarket Park and buy a beer. Great. Congratulations. I'm happy for you that you can buy a beer. If I was there and I wasn't working, or maybe even if I was working, I would love to partake in a beer too. I don't want to mock the media in this state in any way. I would never do that. Those people who lost 30-0 in a slow pitch softball game this week, they deserve all the respect in the world. But we tend to go crazy about alcohol sales at sporting events in this state. And look, I just don't care. Like, if you want to pay $9.50 for a Coors Light, go ahead. I've done it too, but I don't think it's like I'm not throwing myself on the sword over this issue.
All right, Mitch, great rant. First of all, I love this segment, and I'm going to spend my time talking about this, telling you why you're right for a variety of different reasons. Number one, I also don't care about this, but we also have evidence. Okay. So this is a big deal going back to prior to basketball season as well. And they approved it before last basketball season or middle of last basketball season.
PBA.
Yeah. They do it at PBA. And, so I do PA for the women's basketball team. I probably saw 8 to 10 people with beers all season long. And maybe that's not the crowd that they were going for, but for all this hand wringing about it, and people are talking about, oh, well, it could do this and it could do this and it could do this. Like, no, it's okay. People could buy a beer. They could spend $8 on it, $10 on it, whatever they want to. And the rest of it is just completely unaffected. It doesn't make any sort of difference whatsoever. The second part, Mitch, is about the revenue, which is completely like, it doesn't do anything positive or negative. It doesn't move the needle at all. Trev told us this a long time ago. He was like, hey, we do this as an amenity for our fans. We're not doing this to make a buck. We're not doing this to make money. And so they're not seeing these gigantic dividends off of, multi-million-dollar alcohol sales days. No, it's just like, is it there or is it not there? And for me, I do not care.
You know where else you can buy a beer, Connor?
Anywhere?
At the bar across the street from these stadiums, or any gas station before you come in. So, why are we up in arms about the possibility that you might be selling beer? Someone might be drinking beer on the berm at Haymarket Park.
I'm more interested in the dynamic, and we may have talked about this a little bit before, you and I, on my show. I'm more interested in the dynamic between like the Salt Dogs and the Nebraska and the University of Nebraska. That's a weird relationship dating back a very long time. So that gets caught up in this whole thing too.
It seems they should like each other a little bit more than they do. Let me know, when I'll care. I'll care when, and I don't want to put any ideas in people's heads, so this is not an endorsement of this, but when a visiting player in the bullpen at a Nebraska home game gets a beer dumped on his head as he's ready to come in and take the field, and then it becomes the story of the game. I don't think that's going to happen. Nebraska fans aren't going to do that.
It hasn't even happened at Arkansas, so it's definitely not going to happen at Nebraska.
This isn't Colorado football. We're going to continue to take digs at the Buffs, but
yeah,
no, I'm glad we did this. I think it was a success. Things that I don't care about. It will make a return. We will continue to do this as the football offseason goes on.
Yeah, I got a lot of things that I end up talking about that I don't care about too. So I can't wait to unleash my first one. All right. We'll talk to you guys next week. A reminder that Locked On has the first ever national 24/7 sports streaming channel on YouTube. And it's also available for you on the Amazon Fire TV app in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On. Plus, our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app.